Can't thank you enough for joining us today, because we are here to learn about Betty Norlin's fantastic new book, Our Body's the Optimal Design. And Betty, you just came out with this book very recently, right?
I came out with it in 2013.
Right.
And the reason I wrote it is we both shared, when we were in our 20s, the chronic fatigue syndrome, or Epstein-Barr virus. And the reason that I wrote this book was because growing up, I always believed that if you get sick, the doctors will fix you. And growing up in the West, in America, I have tremendous respect for the medical profession that's here, and there's so much they help us with. But what I learned in my 20s that I never realized is they don't have all the answers. And when I had a virus, at least back then, they didn't have a way to fix the virus. And that was very humbling, and it was very scary, and it set me on a path to learn about health and wellness that I've been on all of my adult life. And so one of the reasons that I wrote this is something deep inside of me when I was going through this said work on rebuilding my immune system. And so I began to research and look at how can I rebuild my immune system naturally, because the doctors had no cure for me. And when I researched the illness, they said a third of the people never recovered. And I was not going to be in that third. Right. So that's a little bit about why I wrote this book.
That's right. And Betty, you have told me that you have come to the realization that people really have to take control of their own health and their own health care.
Yes.
And you want to tell us a little bit about that, maybe some examples in your book of that?
I would love to, Randy. I would love to.
Yeah.
One of the things that I came to my own realization on when I was going through my illness is that I had to be my own best advocate. So in addition to what traditional medicine provided, I also felt like I needed to research and learn what non-traditional medicine offered, and then I needed to find my peace and my place with that to offer my healing the best. And as when I went through this over 20 years ago, I knew always that I would write the book. It just didn't come out until 2013. But through the years, I've met amazing people with their own stories and examples. And one of the examples is Chuck Barnhill, King Trump, for those that know him. And he is the most amazing individual. I've known him for years. And he was diagnosed with melanoma. And it developed over the years to stage 4 melanoma. It had spread to, I think it was his liver, his pancreas, and maybe his kidneys. And one of the things that he shared with me was a website that he found called Living Beyond Disease by Michelle O'Donnell. And he absolutely swore by this website. Now, he did do traditional medicine at Moffitt in Tampa, but in addition to that, he found this website and has totally sworn by it. And one of the things he says is it's about attitude, and it's about making sure you have a positive attitude. And I talk a little bit in my book about some of the lessons that he shares, because he's recovered from that. He's been free of that for the last few years, and I just think it's such an amazing story.
Well, that is an amazing story, and it ties into things that I've always heard, Betty, is that mind over body, mind-body connection, which I have to admit I barely even understand. But I just intuitively feel that there is something there to that. And it sounds like in that example, there clearly is something involved with that. So that's just so exciting, and if you get the book, you will learn even more about Chuck's life and experience. That's just amazing, really. Now, I found another interesting aspect to your book, Betty, and that is you are, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's mainly from the kind of Eastern medicine philosophy, but actually there are parts of the body that you can observe that will tell you a lot about your health and your present condition. Is that correct?
It really is.
Yeah.
And one of the things I learned over 20 years ago when I went through my own illness that shocked me and surprised me, and I knew I needed at some point to write this book, was that there is a perfect order in our body. And probably at that time I knew about it in maybe 5 places. I learned about iridology. I learned about acupuncture with the nerve endings in
And
the ear.
iridology is the study of eyes.
The study of the eyes.
Mhm.
I learned about reflexology in the feet and hands. And over the years, I've learned about probably 6 other areas of the body. And one of the things that was very interesting to me with iridology, which is much more recognized in the East than it is in the West, but I did a lot of research, and there's been a lot of research in Russia, there's been a lot of research in Europe. I've spoken to the grandson of Bernard Jensen, who was very well known, kind of the father of iridology, to learn more about it. But when I first discovered it, what I learned is that from the pupil to the outside of the iris, there's seven layers. And the outside layer of the iris, it represents the skin, which is the outside of our body. And as you go deeper into the body, the rings represent deeper parts or more internal parts. So the third ring from the pupil represents the colon. And when I was going through my illness, one of the things that I experienced was a lot of constipation. And what I learned is the third ring out from the pupil tied to the colon, and they said that your eye would be darker when you were constipated, and as your body was working more fluently and working properly, then that part of the eye would not be as dark. And so I kind of watched my eye over time, and I noticed that my eye actually cleared up as my body started working more effectively. So it was really interesting to me, because I think there's so many subtle signs that our body gives us when we learn to pay attention. And I think in the last 10 or 15 years, and people that I've been meeting recently, there's a lot more new science that actually supports some of these things that didn't exist back when I went through my illness.
Well, and I love the story too of the nurses in World War II that were dealing with some very severely wounded soldiers in the ward. And can you maybe, if you don't mind, give us a quick little overview of that?
I don't mind that at all. Louise in West Palm Beach I met when I lived down there in the 80s, and she did reflexology and she did colon therapy. But the story she shared with me that I share in the book is that when she was in World War II, she was a nurse. And the unit that she worked with the guys that were in total body cast from their armpits to their toes. And for some reason, she observed back then that the guys in her unit recovered more thoroughly and recovered more quickly than other guys in the same condition in other units. She never understood why. And then years later, when she got into reflexology, what she learned is that the part of the foot that's kind of between the big toe and the second toe, right where they join, stimulates the immune system. And what they used to do is they'd walk by the guys and they would rub their feet, because that was about the only thing that was exposed. And so she made the connection that they were actually stimulating the immune system without realizing it all those years ago. And so it's those little things that just absolutely amazed me, that I felt I needed to share, and I needed to help people understand that the bodies we have are so amazing. And if we learn to tap into the knowledge that our body gives us, then we can use that knowledge in part of our healing process and in part of our health and wellness.
Oh wow, this is just so exciting, Betty, and your book is so exciting. And maybe you can tell the viewers where they can actually get a copy, because I know you all want one. Right?
Absolutely.
You've got to have at least one. You got to give them away too to friends and family.
Yeah, and I would say anybody going through an illness, I just, get them for your friends. But yes, you can order them here on Pitchin in the Kitchen. You can order them on Amazon, and you can also order them on whaisholistichealth.com. So I look forward to hearing from you and what you think, and just spreading the word for this information, because I've never seen it put together in one place like it's put together here. And I really created this book to be a quick read, but a resource where people could go and dig deeper in any area that resonated within them.
That's awesome. And check out the rest of the wonderful things on pitchininthekitchen.com when you have time. Thank you for joining us today.